This is the most interesting matchup of the Eastern Conference in the first round. This is, to me, what all the eyes need to be on. Indiana versus Milwaukee, a rematch what we saw last year. A lot of different opinions on Indiana. This is an Indiana team with high expectations coming into the year, guys. Tyrese Halliburton kind of up and down, falls off a cliff to start the year. He figures it out. Indiana gets the ball rolling. Will, where are you at with this series? Because I think this is the most pick'em 50-50 one we got in a lot of people's eyes.
Yeah, we started talking about this a little bit off air. Indiana plays such a unique style. And we've seen that, as Celtics fans, like that was the series that, Joe Mazzulla said openly, that was our most difficult series last year. And that was the one series that the Celtics swept, right? And that was the game. We saw every game kind of go down to the wire. The Pacers would build a big lead. Celtics had that big comeback in game 3. Like, this is a team that, they just play a different style, and they do a lot of offensively. They have a lot of movement that kind of is below the 3-point line, right? Like, so it's really hard for teams that are trying to switch, which is part of what the Celtics were doing. And you can get lost real easy. You get lost for 1 second. There's an open 3. There's an open guy at the rim. And when you add in Tyrese Halliburton, who you kind of mentioned, started the season slow, was a little bit up and down. And by the end of the season, he's got a really good chance here of ending up on that third team All-NBA. Like, there's a very good chance that he ends up there, as the Pacers ended up with 50 wins. Like, this is a real solid team right here. And then on the flip side, you have the Bucks, where, we got the update from Shams that it looks like Damian Lillard is out game 1, but potential for him to come back game 2 or 3, coming back from that, from those blood clot contusions, getting off the medication, the blood thinners. And so we'll have to see where that plays out. But to me, this is, do you lean into the better team, which I think for me is pretty obviously the Pacers, or do you lean into the best player in the series, which is pretty obviously Giannis?
Right, exactly.
And this really, to me, just comes down, is Giannis, and this is kind of almost to a degree with or without Dame, I still think the Pacers are the better team. And it comes down to me, is Giannis able to carry his team all the way through? Like, I think Giannis is going to put up some crazy monster numbers in this series.
Right.
Like, you're going to be seeing like 35 and 18 is like the averages that you get from Giannis, who, by the way, has had an amazing season, 30, 12, and 6. It's kind of gone somewhat under the radar just because the Bucks haven't been great. And I've been so off the Bucks as a real threat in the East since they traded Chris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma. That was the same podcast I was on here with you guys. I can't remember if that trade had happened at that time yet, but to me, that just told me everything about how you feel about this team, because even if you think Kuzma is more talented or even just more available than Chris Middleton, the chemistry Chris Middleton had with Giannis, with Brook Lopez, with Bobby Portis, like that gave the Bucks still a little bit of a chance of a higher ceiling than what Kuzma brings. So I've just been so off of everything outside of Giannis happening around the Bucks this whole season that I find it hard to believe it that they're going to put it together. And if they do, it's strictly on the greatness of Giannis. So for me, I think this is a Pacers series. I think it probably goes 6 is what I'm kind of leaning. If it goes 7, then, anything happens in a game 7. And that's where I do think at times the statement of best player in the series can actually hold more weight than it does throughout the entirety of the series. But I think in that one game, you really could see just Giannis go off and be a difference maker on both sides. So for me, I think 6 games, I'm leaning Pacers. I think the Pacers are just such a unique team, and they're just an overall better team with a high, with having players like Halliburton and Siakam that are borderline All-NBA. So for me, this is Pacers in 6.
Yeah, I would have to say the same thing. And you said it right there, Will. You have the obvious best team in the series, in which is the Pacers, versus the obvious best player in the series, in which is Giannis. And I do believe the Pacers just have way more than the Milwaukee Bucks coming into this series. And I'm out on the Bucks. All right. Halfway through the season, I was thinking, all right, maybe the Bucks, making a little push. They won the NBA. The one moment in which people started to come around on the Bucks again was early December. They whooped the Thunder in the NBA Cup final, which looking back at that, where I'm questioning, like, how did that happen that night in Vegas? I mean, you look at the records, you look at how their seasons went, but the Bucks, everybody kind of turned on them at that point, started to turn up on them at that point. But I feel like ever since then, just hasn't been all that great of results. It's been mixed results for the Bucks, whether it's because of Giannis's injury earlier this season, now Damian Lillard dealing with blood clots, and that's going to be an interesting piece of this series that has to be discussed because if Damian Lillard plays, I think the Bucks have a legitimate chance. If he doesn't play, now it's expected that he will play, I will say this,
Mhm.
but if he doesn't play, I think the Bucks have no chance whatsoever.
Right.
Regardless, he's supposed to play in this series. However, how long is he going to last? Because he's dealing with a serious issue. The issue he's dealing with is something that can kill a human. And we've seen players sit out for long stretches of time. We even saw Chris Bosh retire because of blood clots. And now Damian Lillard, he's dealing with that same issue. He's just going to try to push through and play. I'm not really sure what kind of ramifications that could have on himself out on the basketball floor. And if some kind of durability is compromised with Damian Lillard later on down the line in the series, I could see a world in which Damian Lillard maybe plays games 1 and 2 and then he misses the rest of the series. I think under those circumstances, that's where I'm looking at the Bucks going. How sustainable is the Damian Lillard factor in all of this? Because the Bucks are going to need him. Now, I'll say this as well when it comes to Damian Lillard. He's going to be somebody the Pacers can pick on defensively, and the Bucks have a lot of players in which the Pacers can pick on defensively. And I always look at this from a Celtics perspective too. It's like you look at the Bucks, there are just too many players in which you feel comfortable with if you're another team picking apart defensively. And like that's guys like Damian Lillard. You could have Gary Trent out there. Kevin Porter Jr. He's been all right defensively, but he's another guy you could go at times. And Ryan Rollins. Ryan Rollins out of nowhere, just playing major minutes with the Milwaukee Bucks. Anytime I see something like that with a contending team where, you think back to the Warriors, they were able to make it work at times. Like see Jordan Bell in the lineup, Ian Clark, you're going, I don't know, like you're barely hanging on here with your rotations. And now we know the Warriors were ultra talented and able to
Mhm.
make up for a lot of that, but the Bucks, they're one guy, Chris Middleton, at the top of the roster. You'd think, okay, Giannis, Lillard, those are two all-stars right there. Middleton fell off before they expected him to fall off. I mean, he did double ankle surgery, and he clearly
Well, he was
wasn't as
always the key
effective.
to the Dame trade, right? That's the number one thing I always said, and it was, listen, the Dame trade I get, and it to me, like, obviously it worked out very well for Celtics fans. Like they should have, in hindsight, the fact that they didn't make that a three-way team was probably the biggest fatal flaw of that trade for the Bucks. But the biggest thing for me was listen, this all only works if Chris Middleton is the Chris Middleton that used to torture the Celtics in the playoffs a couple years ago, right? Like if you were getting that level of Chris Middleton, that's all-star, all NBA level, can handle the ball, is a solid defender, knockdown shooter, and he just has not or was not healthy until they traded him. And really the only time Chris Middleton was healthy in this whole Dame era was last year. As you mentioned, this was the playoffs in the first round last year, and Middleton was amazing. And then he immediately got double ankle surgery, but there was no Giannis. Dame was in and out in that series. And so that's where really all of this Bucks planning has kind of fallen apart, is that Middleton has not been there to really complete kind of that big three and then have supporting guys around it. So to your point about Dame playing or not, this could be, there's a world where this is the make or break for the Dame Giannis pairing, and we go into an unsure offseason and kind of see how it all plays out from there.
Well, that also, that the Middleton thing, when it comes to all this, I do look at the rest of the roster, and I obviously, you could, the Middleton Kuzma trade happens. You just take Kuzma out of there, replace him with Middleton. But if you have Middleton still in this lineup and he's still producing at an all-star level, you could definitely make the case that this team would be like 5 times better. Put a number on it, but I mean,
Mhm.
multiple times better than what they are right now with their current squad. Because I do see, there is some desperation moves within all this. I mean, Kevin Porter Jr., perfect example. Halfway through the season, Marjan Beauchamp, who wasn't necessarily producing for the Bucks. I was always a Marjan Beauchamp guy. I was like, can this guy, like, can he develop his shot? Can he get out there? Can he defend multiple positions? But they trade him away for Kevin Porter Jr. And Kevin Porter Jr., he's not the best player in the world, but he gives you something offensively, can handle the ball. And there are bright spots within his game. We all know most of the Kevin Porter Jr. nonsense has happened off court, in which has ousted him from a couple of teams already in his NBA career, most notably the Cavs and the Rockets. But Kevin Porter Jr., that's a move of desperation. Ryan Rollins, that's a move of desperation. And in all of this, I go, well, the Bucks, if they had a third star and if they had Middleton producing at the level in which he did in the past, a lot of these fringe moves would look a lot better than simply desperation. And that's what I see with the Bucks right now is they're simply a desperate team. And going into this series, I know a lot of people want to put the whole, Giannis factor on everything and say, well, Giannis, best player in the series. Really, it's hard to pick against the best player in the series, but I do think these two teams, there's a big enough discrepancy between both of them to feel comfortable picking Indiana. And I do like your pick there, Will, of Indiana and 6. The more I look at it, I think Indiana will. I think they'll overcome Milwaukee pretty quickly in this series. I think Milwaukee will at least grab one game. And then you're saying, the Giannis factor, I could see him going for a really big night, and the Bucks might not play well all around, but he might have a really good night. And I could see this series going 6, but I think this is a lot more oriented towards the Pacers than people believe out there. Just because you look at where the two teams have gone this season and some of the injuries and desperation the Bucks are reaching for. Meanwhile, the Pacers just feels like they've gotten stronger as time has moved on, and they're going to have more weapons this time around in the playoffs. Pascal Siakam's been there a whole year. They're going to have Benedict Mathurin all healthy. Same with Tyrese Halliburton. I think this is going to be a much better team come this playoff run for the Pacers than even last year. Meanwhile, the Bucks, you can make an argument in a case that this team is actually worse than their team last year, and the Pacers were able to make easy business of them. Now, Giannis wasn't in that series, as you mentioned. Dame in and out, and Miss Middleton, he was involved, but this year, I think Damian Lillard, I don't know what his true potential is in this series, both speaking on his games and what he's going to look like out there, because he has missed the last however many weeks with this injury, and he's going to be ramping back up into play. And then you don't have that third star, and you have a lot of pieces on this team that I don't think Doc Rivers actually believes in. I don't think anybody in the Bucks front office believes in. But it's like, well, who else do we have to play out here? Throw out Ryan Rollins, throw out Kevin Porter Jr. because we just traded for him. Go and try to make every move out there in order for us to win ball games. And I feel like the Bucks are piecing it together way more than the Pacers right now. I feel like the Pacers are finding more of their groove, especially the second half of the season. Meanwhile, the Bucks, it just feels like they've been constantly putting duct tape and scotch tape all over their team until they finally made the playoffs with a 5 seed at the end of the day. But give me Pacers all day, every day in this series. I was back and forth at the beginning, but I gotta say the Pacers. Just doing the research on all these series, it's definitely the Pacers that I would say have the upper hand at this point in time.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. The thing, Indiana to me is the team outside of Boston I look at in the Eastern Conference, and I'm like, okay, they kind of have all the tools to kind of really make a run at it. Especially the experience factor with Indiana. Will, you mentioned it. They were one prior deep playoff run away from pushing Boston to 6 or 7 games. I mean, at the end of the day, the Boston just kind of outclassed them. At the end of, game 1, Brown hits that shot. Halliburton, the ball goes off his leg in transition, gives Boston life. Boston eventually capitalizes on that. You mentioned it, game 3, they have this big lead. Here comes Tatum and
1 and
Horford.
3 should have been Pacers wins. If you were to go back and re-simulate those scenarios, the percentages would play out that likely that's a 2-2 series coming back to Boston for game 5.
Without a doubt. And they were just one playoff run away from being able to execute those games. So I look at this Indiana team, and hadn't Halliburton gone MIA for the first 30 games, this is a potentially high 50-win ball club. And I don't say that lightly. However, Giannis is that category and tier of player where this is now 3 postseasons post NBA finals win that you're kind of waiting for this guy to get back to the conference finals. Like, he's gonna eventually do it, but it's like, when is he gonna do it? So that's the one thing that's like, does Milwaukee and Giannis, are they just long overdue for just a random conference finals appearance? And I'm gonna go Indiana in 7. I don't hate 6 at all. The one thing, game 6 is in Milwaukee. And I think when down 3-2, I don't see Giannis. Will, you mentioned Giannis, just monster games. That's got Giannis game 6, 45, 20, and 8 just written all over it in my head. So in the back of my mind, I say if Indiana's going to do this, it's either going to be in dominating 4 or 5 game fashion, which I don't likely see, or where it's a game 7 that they kind of handily take. In game 6 is just the Giannis game. I don't rule out Milwaukee, though. I don't. Anytime you got Giannis, you got a chance. He is in that class of players that, You don't see Jokic lose often in anything less than 6. You don't see Tatum
I
lose
think the
often
Bucks and
in anything less
Nuggets
than
are
6.
so similar, man. It's if
Right.
both of them win, it's because Jokic is that special. If the Bucks win,
Exactly.
it's because Giannis is that special. And like it feels almost an oversimplistic explanation of why they would win. But those to me, and I know I'm saying this to a Celtics audience, I still think I probably look at those two guys as the 2 best players in the NBA. Tatum and SGA are right there on their heels, in my opinion, but I still kind of look at those 2 guys as the best, even though they both might get eliminated in the first round. So that feels kind of wrong to say, but if they both get out of the first round, it's going to be on the backs of them doing something really, really special.
But I'll add on to that. This series and even the Nuggets series could display this as well. I think Giannis is going to have to be an absolute superhero in this series, 100%. And that's why the Nuggets and the Bucks, like, if they win these series, the first round series that they have in front of them, because Clippers and Pacers, they're going to be formidable matchups. It's going to be a huge testament to how well Giannis and Jokic played in the series, because the Bucks, just looking at the Bucks, there's way too much reliance on Kyle Kuzma, Taurean Prince, Gary Trent Jr. Bobby Portis came back into the lineup. Everybody in Milwaukee, I mean, basically had a parade over Bobby Portis coming back. It was ridiculous. All these players, you hear those names, and there's just it's like, really, these are the forwards. Really, these are the offensive. Potential creators you have on your roster. You don't really have too much on either end of the floor with some of those names when you're talking about the Bucks and who they rely on within their rotation to defend and both produce offensively. And that's just going to lead to Giannis, both defensively, offensively as well with him. He's going to have monster series. He's going to have to lock down defensively. And this Pacers team, they're going to have a lot of size they throw at Milwaukee. I'll say that the Pacers are oddly versatile and oddly sizable for the team they had last season. Everybody kind of got on board with, oh, this high-paced team. They shoot a lot of threes, offense. This is a sizable squad the Pacers have. I think they're going to throw that size at Milwaukee. And in the series, Giannis is going to have to deal with it a lot defensively, but also offensively as well. He's going to have to come up with the bulk of the creation of the points, the bulk of the as well as Damian Lillard coming up with part of the bulk of the points. But just looking at the Pacers real quick and some of their roster, I think they have the ability to play in multiple ways. Like, if you really look, they can go about 10 deep, and through that, I think they have multiple different styles of play. And I'm just going to throw this out there right now, and we talked about it before we came into the live stream. I would not be shocked whatsoever. We just talked about the Cavs, talked about the Pacers. I would not be shocked whatsoever if that's a second round series, the Cavs and Pacers, and the Pacers actually give the Cavs a run for their money. Because I think the Pacers, even though their record, that has them in the 4 slot, they have the versatility to potentially match teams like the Cavs and even like the Celtics at the bottom half of the bracket. And I would not be shocked whatsoever if we had a repeat of last year's conference finals between the Celtics and the Pacers. It seemed crazy halfway through this season, but as the playoffs shaped up, as the regular season rolled down, I do think the Pacers. At the beginning of the season, I was looking at them going, "There's more size there than people think. There's more versatility than people think." Now, it didn't, culminate and equate into something good early on, but I feel like once the Pacers found their footing, they were a much better team the second half of the season. And we all know it's about playing well going into the playoffs. And the Pacers were one of the best teams in the league over the last 10 games of the season. So I again, Pacers in this series, and even next round, if we're looking at the Pacers and Cavs, I would not be shocked if the Pacers give the Cavs a run for their money and we see a Boston Indiana Conference Finals Part 2.
I'm real quick before we hop into the next series. I agree with that. I think Cleveland has a real defensive problem that people aren't looking into in a playoff series. In Darius Garland and Jared Allen are the catalyst for that problem. When you got a team like Indiana and Boston that space, move without the ball flies. Indiana and Boston are like the 2 most high pick and roll centric teams in the Eastern Conference. When Tatum has the ball in his hand and when White has the ball in his hand, and when Halliburton's got that ball and he's working with Turner, Siakam, and vice versa with Porzingis, it's so dangerous. And you look at Garland and Allen, who are going to be in those action, it's going to cause trouble. And I don't think people are looking into that as enough as they should be. I really do. I like this Indiana team advancing to these. I'm with you with there off of just strictly mismatch. Cleveland's got defensive problems that I don't think people are looking into. I don't.